Welcome back, everybody, to We Are TPM with myself, Kyle Teixeira, sitting next to John Teixeira once again. We are back this week to discuss short sales. So if you guys have any questions about that, want to do one, don't call us. But you can ask us about them. Give us a call, 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at showmethemoney@wearetpm.com. John, what's a short sale? Let's start there. What is it? Like, we're talking real estate, right?
Is it?
So I guess we should be specific. A short sale in a real estate transaction, because this isn't like selling a stock short. How would you compare it to that? Am I short in the real estate market?
No.
These are different things.
No. So somebody has a house with a mortgage on it. They can't sell it for enough to pay off their mortgage and their closing costs. So they have to sell it short of what they owe on it. And that's why it's called a short sale, because it's sold for short of what they owe on it. There's your short answer. I'm sure we'll get into a long answer, but I guess the bigger question might be, why are we talking about it today? Well,
we've been doing this podcast a while now, and we've never talked about short sales, and that is because they have not been relevant.
They don't happen until now. Yeah.
Well, they're very market specific. So think of it, a short sale, like John just said, is when you have to sell it for less than you owe on it. Well, the only markets that should occur in is declining markets, right? Or that have declined since you bought it, right?
Yeah.
So there has been over the up until this year, prices have been increasing significantly over the last 5 years before that. So to have something you owe, that didn't really happen unless you were like a VA trying to move 6 months after buying it or something at 100% loan,
right?
Which they still probably wouldn't have taken a short scenario.
So between 2008 and 2012, I did a ton of these.
Mm-hmm. What happened before then?
Before 2008?
Yeah, I guess it was in 2000. Yeah, it was really before 2008. We had declining market.
That quite literally started in September of 2008. I remember the day, the D-Day and everything. So, but anyways, it doesn't matter.
Well, the collapse of mortgage-backed securities technically started in 2007, but we won't.
Yeah, but the declining market didn't start until then. So that's when we started having to deal with a declining market. And in doing so, a lot of us pivoted and learned how to handle these short sales for people. And so I did a bunch of them during that 3 or 4 year period. Haven't done one since because, as you pointed out, we haven't needed to, because our market has been on the incline consistently since then. And now that it's stagnant, we have people with homes where the value has not gone up enough for them to be able to sell it. And I'm actually selling one right now on a short sale and helping somebody buy one on a short sale right now. So, which tells me this is a thing again right now.
Well, why are we talking about it? We are talking about it is because there can be opportunity, especially investment opportunity, in short sales. And I guess I can get a question people might have of like, well, why couldn't you do this in an increasing market, or why didn't it happen? It also takes bank approval to do short sale. You're essentially getting authorization to pay them back less than you owe them.
Yep.
Like they're approving it, right? And that comes into a mathematical gymnastics on the back end of like how much interest they collected, all this stuff. Where's their break even, right?
Well, actually, it's a pretty simple math equation. You want to get into that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it's pretty simple. Typically, what they do is they typically will not short sell anything for less than 80%, unless you can show a ton of proof it's required. 80% of what they owe on it. So forget about the interest, back payments, all that stuff. Let's just say outstanding balance is, let's just for the sake of a really good argument, is $100,000. They're not going to short sell that home or sell that home for less than $80,000. That's the simple math.
Okay.
Now, there's other things I'm sure that play into it that make it more complicated on the back end, but they don't really share those with us. And I'm
sure it's different depending on. Well, because people might ask, well, why would the bank take that? If you need to do a short sale, or if a short sale is being presented to the bank, the lien holder, essentially you either aren't paying, you're falling behind, you have to move. It's not like there's a lot of other options. So what are the bank's options after that? They're either going to lead to foreclosure and take it back, which they ultimately then have to sell the property themselves, or this short sale scenario where they allow you to sell it for less than they owe on it, and it gets rid of the legal timeline of foreclosure and the added risk. If you're in a declining market, it goes to proper thinking that the more time that goes by, the further down the price will go, right? And they consider that.
And the condition of the home. So if you go through a foreclosure, the condition of the home rapidly deteriorates. And I've never seen a foreclosure. Well, that's not true. I've seen some good foreclosures in good condition, but it's pretty rare. Usually if somebody forecloses, they know they're about to foreclose 4 to 6 months before they do it, and they just stop taking care of the home. As a matter of fact, they don't worry too much about beating up the walls on the way out. So foreclosures typically are ugly. They're not easy to, you're definitely discounting them to sell them. So what the bank is thinking about is, I'm not getting payments for the 4 to 6 months it's going to take me to get them out. I'm going to have to go through the expense of a foreclosure. It's now going to become a bank-owned property, so I'm going to have to go through that expense of bringing it on my books as an asset and then sell it at a discount. All of those things are going to reap me a lot less money than if I just take a short sale offer on a relatively decent home right now.
And the psychology of it is, in the market, the seller, regardless that they're selling it less than they owe on it or the situation, they still have a higher likelihood of getting a closer to retail price than the bank will. Because the second the bank owns it, it's a bank-owned property. People are looking for the discounts. But short sales also take time. So the reason... I mentioned that we're talking about this as an opportunity. Well, it narrows a lot of things in real estate. Anything you can get a discount on for any reason that has a narrow audience can be an opportunity, right? Because these things have long timelines. They're very, there's a lot of uncertainty and stuff. Well, the family shopping at the beginning of summer, needing a home within 30 days probably isn't going to attack the short sale, right? Because these things can go long through the process and still fail.
And here's the other part of it is it's been 15 years since we've really done these. So most agents in the market, unless you're a really experienced long-term agent, don't even know how to deal with these whatsoever.
I don't even know what a short sale is.
Right. And so neither do their buyers, right? So the chance that you have an educated buyer and an educated agent about these things is a lot lower right now than it was 10 to 15 years ago, which, to your point, reduces your audience enormously. They're complicated. They take a long time. They could go in a bunch of different directions. They could be clean and easy. Well, they could be somewhat clean and easy. They're never clean and easy, but somewhat. Or they can be extremely difficult, extremely frustrating for everybody. It can go in a bunch of different directions, and you don't know until you're ready to step foot into it how it's going to go, which is the biggest advantage and opportunity for an investor if you're looking at doing this, okay? So your audience right now is small, right? If you don't get too invested in the deal, just put it out there. Put it out there and say, hey, I'm willing to buy this house for $240,000. Let's start the approval process. Let's see what happens. Don't get invested in what happens. Then you're going to be fine, right? There's no need to get all wrapped up in this deal, have your eye on it. Let your agent follow up on it clearly. But if you're not continuing to shop and looking for other investment opportunities and you're just waiting on this, then you're going to be very disappointed. It's going to be frustrating, and you're not the person that should be doing this.
And if you want them, they got to move on them quick, because the structure we just discussed can, and again, what makes it partially an opportunity is the seller doesn't really care what you sell it for, right? Because if you think about it, the seller has their financial interest is zero or negative, right? They are not able to make money on this deal regardless. So if you give, in your example, $100,000 house, you offer them 90. Well, if you're the first offer to come in at 90 and they get this thing approved by the bank and everything, and an offer for 95 comes in, they're probably going to ignore it. Or they may not. There may be some contractual things, but
It could go either way, and this is what you're pointing out.
The agent has a financial incentive.
Yeah, he does. Well, no, not just for the agent, but let me explain a little bit further, because you're making some good points, Kyle, and that is partially what makes this complicated. Is there's a lot of why we talked about why the bank does it. Why does a homeowner do it? To keep a foreclosure off of their books, right? Give them some time and some normalcy to a little bit more of a normal transaction than just being kicked out and put out on the street. Why does a buyer want to do it? Because they're going to get a better deal, right? That's just the bottom line. But the agent is doing it to help somebody. They're going to make a commission in between no matter what, right?
Yeah.
But what they do know, because they're the best person in the whole process, they are the one that's going to make this go well or not well.
Yeah.
The agent. It's just all about the agent. Every bank has their protocols. They're all difficult to deal with. Doesn't matter what bank. Difficult. Okay? The homeowner's going to have to fill out the same short sale package with almost every bank. Doesn't matter. It's difficult also. Okay? Let's not pretend it's not. But the agent being able to walk through this muddy process and do it successfully, that is the gold.
Because you're not just facilitating a normal real estate transaction and everything that encompasses that. You're also facilitating a short sale with the bank, essentially.
Well, right. And then so what I was getting to was that agent also knows that his chances of success are higher with a higher offer. So it's not about the agent wanting more money or anything like that. It's about, so for instance, you could have two different things. I'm doing one right now with a buyer where the agent has chosen we sent in a good offer. It was actually much lower than the asking price, and we sent in a good offer, and the agent is like, okay, this is a good offer with a good agent that knows what they're doing. The buyer knows what they're doing. Everybody knows what they're doing. He recognizes that this is a good opportunity. He's trying to get this done as fast as possible with this contract. He's got other people sending offers in, but he's just focused on this contract. But just the opposite could happen, depending on the agent, that you could just collect offers, keep collecting offers, tell everybody I've got multiple offers, and people are going to continue to try to move the price up as much as the home and the market for that home will allow. And that will complicate and extend the timeline of this even more, right? So either of those things could happen or something in between. Okay. I used to do, when I was doing them, we used to get 20, 25 offers on these things. I used to try to pick the top 3 or 5 that I thought would work, and then just run with those and work with the bank. Hey, I've got these offers. These are the ones we're working with. You kind of spreadsheet it for them. But anyways, it's difficult. And then you just try to let everybody know that we've got enough offers. And
you also got to remember, this could be it's not just experienced agents. The chances of these bankers being used to short sales too is probably low.
Well, yes, but they have systems now, and they're better at it now because in 2000...
It's all just protocols these days.
Well, and we've got technology, Kyle, that we didn't have back then, right? So
they don't have to wonder whether that valuation is right. They have a lot more data points to see what things are going for. So, well, let me ask you this, because you said in the seller's incentive, in a foreclosure, for example, if they get foreclosed on, destroys their credit. But not only that, if the bank sells it for less than they owed on it in that situation,
that's right,
they still owe the difference.
That's right. They do.
In a short sale, correct me if I'm wrong, they will still owe the difference, or there is agreement with the bank to not owe that difference.
No. You are correct that they will be forgiven.
Exactly.
Difference.
So there is a significant financial incentive.
There's a caveat to that.
Let's hear it.
You are going to pay taxes on the loss. So if you owe $100,000 and they write off $20,000, the IRS looks at that as a $20,000 gift or income that you will pay taxes on.
Because they're going to get a write-off for it, and you're going to pay for it, essentially.
Whatever. They're looking at it as a gift. It's a cash gift from the bank, essentially, in the IRS's mind.
So you're going to have the IRS coming after you instead of the bank.
I'm not a CPA. Huh? Do we need to do our disclosures? I'm not a CPA.
This is not financial advice. This is
not financial advice.
We're not financial advisors. But I mean, there is a trade-off. I guess it depends on how short you're selling it, because the one thing I know about life is you'd rather anyone in the world be collecting on you other than the IRS.
You're going to get a 1099 for that amount. That's
Nice.
the bottom line. What your CPA does with that 1099 is up to you and your CPA.
Well, when you're selling short, that's probably not the biggest issue that you have at that moment. But
so what's the ideal scenario to do this? We talked about, I was just saying how I used to get these and get 20 to 25 offers. Okay. I don't want to mislead people. I don't think that's happening right now. And I think that's the opportunity here and now in 2025. I think the opportunity is there's a lot fewer people that even know what they are, how to deal with them. There's not as many of them. It's not like it was before, you know. If you're on an MLS sheet of 100 properties, you may find, 2 to 5 in there at the most. It's maybe not even that. So 2 to 3. So they're not plentiful, but when you do come across them, you're not competing like the example I gave before. There's not as much competition. There's not 20, 25 offers coming in. There's an opportunity here for investors that want to understand what a short sale is, put offers in and keep moving, right? Don't sit on that offer. Don't get invested in that offer because...
Well, and we're not deep enough into a decline, to see how these may increase, or these could go away. This could be a short-term thing again. You never really know, because like in your situation, you're talking about in 08 and 09, there was a lot of people selling short because most people selling owed more than the houses were worth that had bought them recently. So
values declined.
Yeah, values decline. So
right now they're not necessarily declining, but what causes this, right? It's not just values declining. So I've got 2 examples, both of homeowners being deceased. Okay, and in both the short sales I'm dealing with right now, the families can't keep up with it. Right? Somebody died. The families can't keep up with the payments. They pile up. They get in arrears, 6, 7, 8 months in arrears. And it's a hardship that they cannot keep up with. And that's not to mention the taxes, the insurance, maybe HOA dues, the whole bit. And they just can't do it. And sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with values as much as...
yeah, because
you just get so far behind that you can't sell it for high enough amount to cover where you're behind.
Well, there's a lot of costs in purchasing, right? So take those costs up front, and then the mortgages are front loaded. Most for the first 10, in 10 years of a 30-year mortgage, you're not going to have paid off a third of that mortgage. They're front loaded with interest. So if a short period of time since you bought it has gone by, you probably haven't paid much down. You have to consider that at the sale, you're still going to pay the commissions and the closing costs. So, like, even if you sold it for the same price the next day, you'd have to do a short sale, essentially. Well, not have to, but there's this is also there's people who have to come to the table when they sell things. They sell it for less. So there are short sales essentially that don't go through a short sale process with the bank. So I guess it's important to specify that this is a bank thing.
We're talking about
specifically short sales related to bank approval. There are situations where people have to sell a house and come with the cash. But short sale essentially you don't have it.
They have a deficit. I had lots of people come with cash. Lots of sellers come with cash in the past because they have a deficit. Yeah, but that's not what a short sale is, and that's not what we're talking about today. Yeah. So. To your point, and this may be a little bit off topic, but to your point, if you're getting yourself in this situation where you've just bought a house in the past 2 or 3 years, I tell people it takes 3 to 5 years before you even break even on a brand new home, right? It's just like when you buy a new car. You can't buy a new car and then go out and resell it. You're upside down on that car. Same thing with a house. You're going to be upside down on that house because you bought it brand new. There's advantages and disadvantages to buying new homes, and that's one of the disadvantages. However, if you're going to hang on to it for a while, or if you get yourself into a situation where you have to sell it, you might consider renting it so that you don't get into this situation, right? And even if you don't get every penny, my nut every month is $2,400 a month, right? That's what my out-of-pocket is. And I have to get $2,400 a month out of this, and you can't? Well, if you get 22 or 23, that's a lot better than getting into arrears 6 to 8 months, right? And overthinking the whole thing. Don't overthink it.
And that's the other market
Take
conditions.
your lumps.
Market conditions these start popping up in is when you have an inverted rent to the mortgage payment, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of where we're at right now. If you buy most of the things you buy at the current interest rates, at least in our market, you can't rent it out at a cash flowing price.
And people get stubborn
day
on
one
prices.
At least, yeah.
They get stubborn on rental prices. They get wrapped up in their decision. They get frozen by their decision and don't do anything. And every day that goes by, it costs you money.
Yeah, that wasn't fair to say it that way because it's all about structure, like we've talked about on recently. Is like, well, most investors put 20% down to avoid mortgage insurance. So if you're now paying mortgage insurance because you only put 5% down, that's adding to the monthly cost, and all these things add up. So higher insurance, maybe a higher rate because it was FHA instead of conventional.
So can you get conventional lending on these short sales? That's another good question people might be wondering. That is a good
question. Is this like a wholesale off-market thing? Like the answer is yes.
Yeah, so a couple
like
things
a conventional mortgage. Like as a buyer, can I just use a normal mortgage versus hard money and all the other tools we've talked about?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. You can use any of those tools. You can just go get a regular mortgage from your mortgage company. But one thing you should know is that the bank, which is acting as an intermediary between the seller, is not going to allow the seller to get one penny, first and foremost. And secondly, they're also not going to pay closing costs. So as a buyer, you need to anticipate that you're going to have to pay maybe a little bit more in closing costs than you would in a traditional transaction.
Let me ask you this. Is everything else normal about it?
For the buyer.
Yeah, for the buyer.
Once you have approval from the bank, once you have short sale approval, almost everything is normal except that your inspection process, your repair requests, and so forth are going to go a little bit differently. They're not very negotiable with doing repairs. The seller actually has to do it because you have to remember, you're still buying it from John Doe down the street. Mm-hmm. He still owns the home. He's the one selling it to you. Even though you seem to be dealing with and negotiating with a bank, it's really John Doe that owns the home that's on title that you're working with. So, and they don't have any money. That's why they're short selling it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So, but it's coming out of the bank's pocket at that point. I guess why I asked that was appraised value. Like, so in a normal transaction like FHA or something, if the appraised value comes in low, now you can't close at that price. So you got the seller.
It's probably not going to happen on a short sale, though. I don't think I've ever seen an appraisal come in low on a short sale. That's the whole point of a short sale. So one of the things that you do as part of the agent does, we talked about the agent being worth everything here. One of the things that agent is going to do in preparing and getting that approval for the short sale is they're going to do what's called a BPO, and that's a broker price opinion. Very, very much like an appraisal. Almost, it basically is an appraisal. It's just not done by an appraiser.
It's done by a broker. But yes, it's like an appraisal done by a broker. So that's
so you don't have to worry about getting an appraisal short. Now you do still have to do an appraisal, like your mortgage company as the buyer, right, is going to order an actual appraisal. To your point. And it could come in short, and then, but I don't know what would happen with that. I mean, I think that would just cause your whole deal to bust because the bank has already approved a certain amount.
Well, I think that might be one scenario where market conditions would come into effect. They might start looking, all right, where's the market going right now? Because if one appraisal comes in short, the likelihood that the next one will.
Well, if they're declining so much that you're doing a short sale, and the appraisal comes in short, I don't know. Maybe you probably don't want to buy that house or buy any houses at that point. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe wait till it hits bottom. I don't know.
Yeah.
I never tell people to time the market, but I've never seen a bad market like that.
There are red flags in this world.
Really big ones like that would be.
Well,
what do you think everybody else is wondering about short sales? Think we covered it all?
I think so. Do you guys have any questions about short sales? How to do one? You want to do one? Yes. Call us. Give us a call, 817-818-9039, or shoot us the email at showmethemoney@wearetpm.com, and we are out.